The information just published some shocking developments out of OpenAI. The rumors about their secret strawberry model are true. The model formerly known as Q-Star is real and managed to get the interest of America's various national security agencies. Sam Altman and the OpenAI team had to demonstrate its abilities to various national security officials. What's maybe even more interesting is that the technology behind Strawberry is being used to build the next generation model called Orion. This Orion model will be different from any other model we've seen before in one very unique way. And exactly what the Orion model will be has some big implications for AI safety, for national security, the future of open source, and overall AI progress.
It's bigger than you can possibly imagine. Subscribe so you don't miss it.
All right, so today the information reported OpenAI shows Strawberry AI to the feds and uses it to develop Orion. So this crazy situation just keeps unfolding. It's getting weirder and weirder. It's just strawberry fields forever. So for those of you that are just catching up, so everything I think kicked off with this article back in July 15th, 2024, OpenAI working on new reasoning technology under codename Strawberry. So Reuters has been all over this from last year when they reported on Q-Star, the advanced AI model, the secretive AI model that got leaked somehow, or at least some details about it have been leaked, and it made huge headlines. So Q-Star. And we'll talk about in just a second why it's called Q-Star, but it's important to understand that the Strawberry project is Q-Star. They're one and the same. So either they changed kind of their internal naming of it or whatever, but we're talking about the same thing. Or at least if the star in Q-Star refers to the research out of Stanford in 2022, self-taught reasoner or star, or maybe the later paper they published called Q self-taught reasoner, Q-Star. Maybe OpenAI internal name for it was Q-Star, and Strawberry is sort of the completed product, the final thing, similar to how you have GPT and then you have ChatGPT. ChatGPT is the thing that's out there doing stuff. GPT is kind of the architecture, the foundation. That's just a guess. I have no idea, but it's important to understand that both Strawberry and Q-Star are referring to that thing. So what is that thing? Well, the leaked document describes a project that uses Strawberry models with the aim of enabling the company's AI to not just generate answers to queries, but to plan ahead enough to navigate the internet autonomously and reliably to perform what OpenAI terms deep research, according to the source. OpenAI's spokesperson said this about Strawberry: "We want our AI models to see and understand the world more like we do, we being humans. Continuous research into new AI capabilities is a common practice in the industry, with a shared belief that these systems will improve in reasoning over time." And one final thing that you need to understand before we dive back into the article that was just published, and it's this. So this is Noah Goodman. So he's not affiliated with OpenAI. He is a Stanford researcher, PhD in machine learning, I believe. He was one of the authors of that STAR paper, as well as the next iteration of it, the Q-Star, that looked into how the model could quietly reason to itself before outputting its final things, just similar to how we think and then we say stuff, hopefully, right? At least that was like one of the things they discussed. But here's what he said. He said, STAR enables AI models to bootstrap themselves into higher intelligence levels via iteratively creating their own training data. And in theory, could be used to get language models to transcend human level intelligence. And he's saying, well, if that's the case, then we have some serious things to think about as humans, which is true, I gotta say. Because if this is true, then that could mean some pretty huge implications that we have to deal with, and very, very soon. We'll come back to that in just a minute, because a lot of people have been dismissing this and saying this is not going to happen, this is science fiction, blah, blah, blah. We're not anywhere close to this. We're going to run into issues with training data. We don't have enough training data. You know, they already scoured the internet for training data, and we're out. That's it. And we're going to enter an AI winter. Progress is going to slow down. These LLMs will not be able to keep improving, etc. You've seen these videos, these articles, right? We've hit a wall. That's it. Okay. So then August 7th, Sam Altman, the one and only Sama, posts this. He says, "I love summer in the garden," and a picture of strawberries. A lot of people don't like his little antics in his marketing / trolling, whatever you want to call this. I really enjoy it. Thank you for making our lives less boring. Just want to say that and get that out of the way. And so the information kind of report on that. They're saying, why is Altman being so cheeky? And there's tons of articles, some of which we've covered here. So New York Times saying basically, oh, Sam Altman doesn't really have anything, and he's just sort of engaging with these anonymous Twitter accounts / X accounts to just create empty hype, but there's nothing actually happening. The reason I point that out is because so far kind of the narrative has been he doesn't have anything. That's why he hasn't released anything. And that's why he's engaging in all this weird stuff, because he doesn't have anything. So that was the narrative. Let's see how quickly that narrative changes. Don't be surprised if in the next few months you see headlines saying how he has the world's greatest technology, the most dangerous technology, and blah, blah, blah. So it's going to go from nothing to maximum fear factor. But here's the new thing that just got reported. Sam Altman's team demonstrated the technology, the Strawberry Q-Star technology, to American national security officials, said a person with direct knowledge of those meetings, which hasn't previously been reported. This is the brand new thing that we were able to find out. But this technology is being presented to America's national security sort of apparatus. So it's probably not nothing. I think there might be something there. Because keep in mind, I think Britain formed these little committees, and a lot of these companies like Meta and OpenAI, they were supposed to report to them before releasing any models. There was kind of like a handshake agreement there, and then none of the actual AI companies did that. So before, a lot of these government kind of international companies and groups were like, you better report everything before you release it. All these big companies are like, nah, we're not going to do that. Now, by demonstrating an unreleased technology to government officials, and specifically to kind of the US's sort of national security officials, OpenAI could be setting a new standard for AI developers, especially as advanced AI increasingly becomes a national security concern. If you've been following this channel, you've heard me talk about this before. And in fact, we've covered a paper that kind of predicts how all of this will unfold. So really, none of this should be a great surprise. Quickly, let me just say this. So we'll probably refer to this. So this is the Situational Awareness. Leopold Aschenbrenner, published in June 2024. So he was one of the OpenAI's safety researchers. He was on the Dwarkesh Patel podcast. He was the one that published this paper and started talking about it. So after being let go from OpenAI, because allegedly he's been engaging in some leaks. And again, I don't know if that's true or not, but that was according to the rumors at least, he was sort of allied with Ilya Sutskever. And he published this piece basically outlining how this AI/AGI race, how it will unfold. And pretty much everything he said really aligned with my thinking. This wasn't the thinking at the time. He was the first person to spell some of this stuff out. And now as this is unfolding, I wouldn't be surprised if, number one, the next decade, the next 10 years, it will have a name, right? So just like the personal computer era, the .com era, whatever, this might be called the intelligence era or something like that. And so far, a lot of the things that we're learning so far are lining up with this. America's leading AI labs self-proclaim to be building AGI. He's kind of referring to OpenAI here. They believe that the technology they are building will, before the decade is out, be the most powerful weapon America has ever built. But they do not treat it as such. To me, this was very apparent after watching I think it was the most recent kind of Apple reveal where, you remember, they're like, we're remaking the calculator, right? And everybody's like, what? Right? Because this was sort of like proof, okay, not only is Steve Jobs gone, but the spirit of Steve Jobs is gone, because they're like making random updates to the calculator. Like innovation is just dead at Apple. But I think they surprised everyone because they really did sort of upgrade the calculator to where you can draw charts on it with the pen, and it's able to use some underlying AI technology to kind of morph it into something different. You're able to like just easily create charts and graphs and formulas by writing on it like you would on a piece of paper, and it's able to change the numbers and change the variables, and it looks pretty cool. And no one knew it was coming. Everyone was surprised. Think about it. A company as large as Apple, how many people leaked that information? Zero. No one did, as far as we know. And that's for something as silly as, the iPhone and the calculator, etc. But with OpenAI and them building AGI, well, let's just say we know a lot more about what's happening behind those walls than we should. There's a lot of leaks. And he continues, as it becomes clear that superintelligence will be utterly decisive in international military competition and economic competition and just these games of influence that countries play, we will have to face the full force of foreign espionage. He continues that our failure today will be irreversible soon. In the next 12 to 14 months, we will leak key AGI breakthroughs to the CCP. to China. It will be the national security establishment's single greatest regret before the decade is out. So coming back to this brand new article out of The Information, they continue. This demonstration, again, to America's national security officials also likely has another purpose, starting a conversation with officials about how the company can secure the technology so that foreign adversaries like China can't steal it. And maybe also take a shot at Meta platforms for releasing open weight AI that China and everyone else can access. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg says it's inevitable that China will get it one way or the other, which he did talk about also on the Dwarkesh Patel podcast. And I got to give some props to Dwarkesh here. So he's interviewed tons of people in the AI space, as well as other topics of interest. But my hat is off to him. He's the guy on the left here. In the space of doing AI-related interviews, I think far and away the number one interviewer there. I think he's very smart, very knowledgeable about this stuff, like deep knowledge, really like these incisive questions. And I think he really puts the guests at ease. As I'm sitting here, I'm realizing they're both wearing socks. And maybe that's the key to really in-depth personal interviews. You get them to take their shoes off. How uncomfortable could you be in your socks? But yes, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg did talk about China getting it. He did release the open weight AI. I think his full argument isn't fully captured here, because it's not like, oh, we can't do anything about it. His argument is more about the fact that open source can actually lead to better security. Whether that's right or not, whether you believe that or not, that's his argument. He makes it very well. It's very reasonable. Again, not saying it's true or not, just that he builds a strong argument for it. And so next we get into the meat and potatoes of this whole thing, why Strawberry matters to Orion. What is Orion? So one of the most important applications of Strawberry is to generate high-quality training data for Orion. Orion is OpenAI's next flagship large language models that's in development. Say what? The codename hasn't previously been reported. So I don't have any affiliate relationship with theinformation.com, who, these are the people that wrote this article and some of the best articles on AI that I've seen. I think they're got to be the number one reporting source for OpenAI for sure. They are behind a paywall, so you do have to sign up. I've been paying for the information literally since early last year, I want to say. I think it's one of the only places where I pay for an online publication, or at least like a newspaper style publication. I think this is one of the only ones. And they continue, can anyone explain to us why OpenAI, Google, and Amazon have been using Greek mythology to name their models? I mean, yeah, Google is Gemini. And I think that's to kind of illustrate the two sort of like there's Google proper and then there's Google DeepMind. And they always kind of had this separation. So that's what I've always sort of understood it to be. But yeah, it is interesting how there's a number of Greek mythology kind of woven in here. And next in that article, they talk a little bit about how that Strawberry model or the Orion model, how it could be applied in a product, etc. So great article. I'll link it down below. Like I said, you do need a subscription for it. So I'm not going to read the whole article and take away from the great reporting that they've been doing. But I do want to very quickly cover this STAR, self-taught reasoner, because again, we think this is the foundational technology behind all of it. And since I've kind of followed the space for a number of years now, one thing that becomes kind of very apparent to me is that how a lot of this stuff happens is usually somebody like Stanford or Google or a number of other great sort of research labs, they'll publish a paper, something like this, and everything kind of stays quiet for a bit. And then within 6 to 12 to 18 months, you have this flurry of activities as a lot of the kind of like commercial companies start flooding the market with products or some sort of software or something that is built on top of that technology. So this was published in May 2022. So long before we've heard about any of this stuff, really. And so what is STAR? It's this technique, self-taught reasoner. So self-taught, meaning the model teaches itself. And reasoner meaning, how sometimes you talk through something and it helps you make sense of what is happening. You come to a better solution. If you walk yourself through it or you write it down or you talk to somebody else about it. So here, that's what they mean by reasoner. It's like how in math class, they might say, show your work type of thing, right? And so STAR relies on a simple loop. Generate rationales to answer many questions, prompted with a few rationale examples. If generated answers are wrong, try again to generate a rationale giving the correct answer and fine tune on all the rationales that ultimately yielded correct answers. Repeat. If that doesn't make any sense, it will all become very, very clear in just a second because they have pictures. Yay, pictures. And so just really fast, I've covered this multiple times before, so I don't want to go too deep on it. Basically, so imagine a question, right? So what can be used to carry a small dog? And then you have multiple answers here. Now, the thing that LLMs often get blamed for, that AI gets blamed for, is for hallucinations. You ask it a question, it just makes up something and you're like, what? And it's so like convinced that it's right, even when it's obviously false. For one of the old videos, I had this weird back and forth with, I want to say ChatGPT or Gemini at the time, Bard, maybe Google's old version, where it generated kind of a quiz for me and was asking what was the first-person shooter. So they had 4 answers. One of them was Doom and one of them was Quake. So I select Doom. It goes, no, actually it's Quake. And I'm like, what year was Doom released? It's like December 10th, 1993. What year was Quake released? June 22nd, 1996. So I was like, which game came out earlier? Doom in 1993 or Quake in 1996? It's like, well, certainly Doom 1993 is earlier than 1996. Okay. So I asked it, so which one was the earliest first-person shooter? And it, of course, answers Quake. So it had this complete inability to sort of reason about or to provide rationale for its answers. Even if you kind of like helped it think through it, provided the rationales, it still would just sometimes make certain stuff up. But as early as 2022, we might have had some idea of how to potentially improve its ability to reason and provide rationales. So in this situation where we're asking it what can be used to carry a small dog, we ask it to first provide a rationale and then provide the answer. I always have this fear I'm going to accidentally draw something inappropriate without realizing it. And then when I'm editing the video, I'm like, oh no, like I have to, I don't know, reshoot it or whatever. Anyways, so this is the rationale. The answer must be something that can be used to carry a small dog. Baskets are designed to hold things. Therefore, the answer is basket. B. By the way, you know which model right now that's live, that's out, has a really good reasoning ability? Surprisingly good? Grok 2. The large Grok model, Grok 2 that just came out, is very, very good at this. There's something that feels unique about it, something different. It's still in beta, so we'll see how that continues, but it's noticeably good at that. So anyways, this question is fed into, the language model. It answers with the rationale and the answer, which is what we covered here. And if it's correct on the first try, it gets added to, well, let's call this like a database. So it's data. It's synthetic data. So it's data that's been generated by an AI model. This is how we train these models to understand how to speak English or natural language, right? So in the beginning, we fed them exclusively human-generated data, right? So somebody writes a book, a textbook, for example, that the model gets trained on that textbook, and then it's able to, reason and answer questions about the text. The textbook was made by a human author, so it's human data. Synthetic data is data that's produced by AI. So this answer is produced by AI. This rationale is produced by AI, and that gets fed into this. Let's just call it data for now, right? We'll come back to that. And if the answer is wrong, it's given a hint, right? And then we run it through, we ask it again to rationalize. And then I think they do that until it answers. I don't know what they do if it keeps getting it wrong. I think it was somewhere in the paper. I just forget. It's been a while since I read the full thing. But the point is, like, all roads lead to Rome. All roads lead to this database of synthetically generated data. It's rationale. And that data is used to train the next generation model, to specifically, not to train it from scratch, but to fine tune it. By the way, a lot of people, like I think Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg and others, have kind of said this or hinted at it. They've kind of talked about the fact that it kind of used to be that we had, data, and then we had, we would train the model, and then we would have the model, right? So it's kind of these sort of discrete or self-contained things, right? So data, a certain amount of data, then the training that's a specific set of time, like a process that has a beginning and an end. Like we start training, we end training, and then voila, we have the model, and it's inert, so to speak, is just there. But a lot of the people with the insider knowledge are now saying, well, that's probably not how it's going to be moving forward. Now it's becoming more of a loop, a continuous process, and the line between training and inference is blurring, right? So inference is the output of the model. That's what it says. The output, whether it's images or text or video. And training is when we give it data to help it learn, right? So training is sort of giving it data. Inference is it outputting data. And they're saying that line is getting more and more blurred. And you can see looking at this image why. Because, we train the model, then it starts answering questions. We take that rationale, we just get kind of feed it back into itself. So this inference, these answers are also the training data. Okay, but so what? Why is this important? By the way, a lot of people have published research or some YouTube videos, for example, talking about the AI model collapse problem. I haven't seen his video yet, so I'm not specifically talking about his video or even Frau Sabine Hossenfelder But I do believe it's very fair to say that, yeah, while there's some research showing that there will be a collapse or that there could be a collapse, I think maybe sometimes it's presented as this like sure thing, guaranteed thing. There's also other research that shows the opposite. I mean, again, with this STAR paper, again, Noah D. Goodman, PhD out of Stanford University. I mean, a lot of these people tend to be very measured with their words. They're not prone to hyperbole. I think that's fair to say, in general at least. So again, Goodman, that's him that they're talking about, right? So one of its creators, STAR, right, Stanford professor Noah Goodman told Reuters, STAR enables AI models to bootstrap themselves into higher intelligence levels via iteratively creating their own data, right? So that's what we just looked at. What does that mean? Well, he says, in theory, this could be used to get language models to transcend human-level intelligence. And if that's the case, well, that's some serious thinking to do as humans, because, well, then we're no longer the apex intelligence on this planet. But I think it's fair to say that when people talk about like the AI model collapsing because of using kind of AI-generated data, synthetic data, they often seem to be talking about image generation models. So maybe it's more prevalent there or not, I don't know. But with large language models, with these text generation models, right? So for example, here's Orca 2 from Microsoft, right? This was kind of a big deal because they were able to create these very small models that really punched above their weight, so to speak. For some of these tasks, they were as good or better than models that are 10 times larger, right? If you look at this, Orca 2 models match or surpass all other models, including models 5 to 10 times larger. How was Microsoft able to create a tiny model that just beat out the competition that's 10 times larger? Well, they took GPT-4, right, the massive model, so like the really the big boy, and they had it generate synthetic data. So that sort of that reasoning data where it's like, here's how you think through things. They had to do that for specific applications. I think one of them they described where you're given like 4 or 5 sentences that are part of the story, but they're kind of jumbled up and you're supposed to put them in chronological order. So you're supposed to kind of understand the story and then figure out where each of those sentences goes, which one goes first, second, third, fourth, etc. And so, of course, GPT-4, this massive model, 1.7 trillion parameters or whatever that number is, it was very good at it, right? But it's expensive, it's slow, but it output its reasoning about how to deal with that problem. They took that synthetic data that it created, trained Orca 2. Orca's tiny. They have a few different sort of sizes of it, but it's much smaller. And it started beating out the competition 10 times larger. And so Microsoft writes this, they're highlighting the value of teaching smaller models to reason, but it also highlights the potential of using tailored and high-quality synthetic data created by a more powerful model for training language models using complex prompts and potentially multiple model calls. Sorry if I started droning on there a little bit, but basically you take a more powerful model and that's able to create high quality tailored data, synthetic data for a specific model to be sort of born into the world or that specific task. If you can understand that, you really grasp, you grok this whole thing and what Orion is and why it's such a big deal. By the way, the Strawberry Man, aka I Rule the World, certainly seems that wasn't just drumming up hype for no reason. He predicted something to happen on a certain date. It didn't, so people kind of dismissed him. But here, as Mark Kretschmann says, you're always right except for the timing. And certainly this really does line up with a lot of the stuff that he's been saying. A little bit cryptically, but I mean, something's up. So the information also dropped this. OpenAI races to launch Strawberry reasoning AI to boost chatbot business. Kind of reiterating here that OpenAI demonstrated Strawberry to national security officials and is planning to improve the upcoming Orion large language model, which again, we think is this kind of like this loop. By the way, anybody that's really knowledgeable about all this stuff, let me know in the comments, why do you think it's called Orion? Like, assuming some of the stuff that we've talked about is true, is it the mythology? Is it the constellation? Is there some symbolism here? Let me know if you think there's some connection there. I would be very interested to know your take. But besides that, also, it seems like OpenAI, according to some of the leaks from employees, they're saying that Strawberry will be released in a chatbot form, some sort of a smaller, maybe less capable model from the Strawberry family. It will be released as a chatbot that you and I will be able to use, potentially, have a few generations with it where we can like turn it on or off. Maybe it'll be more expensive or you'll have some sort of a rate limit on how much you can use it. And they're saying that it's really good at reasoning, thinking through multiple steps ahead, long-term planning. And as an example, they'll say it can solve a New York Times crossword puzzle, for example. Or specifically, I think they refer to this game of connections, where you got to create groups of 4 words. And of course, large language models have been very kind of notoriously bad at thinking through and solving certain things. We've seen some potential improvements with different prompting mechanisms. So for example, we've covered this last year, I want to say, the tree of thoughts, where you have these branching thought patterns that you might go down one path and then back and then start over until you find the correct output. So the reason I said crossword puzzles, because that's kind of a great example of what that looks like. Like once you start filling out the crossword puzzle, you might come up with an answer and then you have to plug it in to make sure it's the correct length. And if there's other letters already placed there, you got to make sure it matches. And then you might say, nope, well, that wasn't it. And you go back, you start over, you guess another, right? And you kind of walk through it and you finally get the right output. So out of the box, large language models just cannot do this, but with these kind of complicated prompting mechanisms with iterations, they are able to do it. But notice the green here, those are the outputs. The gray here, that's the thoughts. So they call them thoughts. So it's probably what we're referred to as reasoning. So as it's writing the words out, it's reasoning through. So for example, the most common thing to do is you ask the model a question and it gives you an answer. But chain of thought is where you say, think through it step by step. So it goes, okay, well, here's what I understand. That's step 1. This is what I understand. Step 2, step 3, right? And it kind of thinks through it, says it all out loud, and then comes to a conclusion. And these outputs, these conclusions tend to be better. This self-consistency with chain of thought, it's not as common, but for example, you might know that Gemini models tend to generate multiple responses. And basically, so if you ask it, what's 2 plus 2, right? And you generate 10 responses and 9 of them are like 4. And then like one of them is like cat, right? You might look at that and go, well, it's probably not cat. You might be pretty certain the answer to 2 plus 2 isn't cat because all the other ones answered 4. And so then basically you have like a majority vote, right? So the more common answer wins. And that tends to improve the outputs as well. But notice here with tree of thoughts, these are individual outputs, right? So you ask it a question, it answers. Then you ask it another question, it answers. So you almost have to prompt it over and over and over and over again to get to the output. Now it sounds like this reasoning is getting much better. And that's what I've seen with Grok too. And again, it's a little bit early to tell, but there's something that seems to be really good about its reasoning. The thoughts, aka the thoughts. Also, the same people that published the STAR paper also produced Quiet Star. Q star, Quiet Star. Language models can teach themselves to think before speaking. When you were younger, did your parents teach you to think before speaking? Some of us still struggle with that. And notice Mr. Noah D. Goodman from Stanford is also there. I think it's the same team. And the whole thing here is basically having its thoughts and its outputs, its talk kind of be different things. So it thinks through things and then it talks. It has the output. And then the thoughts that lead to better outcomes are rewarded and the language model learns from that and improves from that. And the negative thoughts are discarded, or rather the thoughts that tend to lead to negative outcomes like that way of thinking is discarded. And so the more thinking tokens these models get, so tokens are like words. So basically the more it thinks about it, you can think of it as, and the more iterations and training steps that it takes, as you can see, the better it is. The red line is it thinks ahead the most, right? Versus baseline. By the way, kind of like the little dirty secret of the AI industry that kind of nobody talks about is everyone's training on each other's models. So everyone's trying to pull out the data from their competitors and train their models on it. Microsoft and Orca, they put it in a research paper. He's like, here's, we're doing it. It works, right? And they're not, I guess they're sort of competitors, but they also work together. So some Google researchers, I think they left or they got mad that Google was training Bard on OpenAI's data. We don't know if that's true or not. It's just, there's a few people that have claimed it. And I think they left Google. So again, allegedly and rumors, no idea. But, Adobe, for example, they had Firefly, their AI image generation thing. And they were saying how this is the ethical AI generation tool. It's trained on licensed stock images and not like those bad guys like Midjourney because they're, stealing artists' artwork. And of course, it seems like a big chunk of their training data of their images came from Midjourney. So that synthetic data generated by Midjourney was used to train Adobe Firefly. Allegedly, don't sue me, bruh. And Adobe's saying it's only 5% of their training data, of the millions of images that they've used. So assuming all of those facts are true, assuming all my reasoning is true, when do you think Orion or GPT-6 will be released? I wouldn't think of it as GPT-6. I would not. But here, this person's saying the information reports that OpenAI's all-powerful reasoning model, Strawberry, is available internally, but has not yet been released. Instead of launching Strawberry, they're using it to produce synthetic data to train Orion. Strawberry is good at math and reasoning. So when will OpenAI release Orion to the public? If I had to guess, I would say never. Or at least certainly not until it's very, very outdated and there's much, much better models that OpenAI has access to. I don't think Orion ever will be released to the public. I think OpenAI will keep it behind closed doors and use it to produce these new models, to use it to create synthetic data, train all sorts of new models, potentially in the style of Orca 2, where each one is really good. It is small and really good at doing that specific thing that it's designed to do. The image that popped into my head is if you've ever seen Aliens, or there's other movies like it, but you got the alien queen kind of in her chamber, protected, laying eggs, and then all those things going out and doing her bidding, right? Her job is to lay the eggs. And then those eggs, once hatched, produce the drones, I think they're called, that then go and they do the stuff that needs to get done. Orion is the thing that lays the eggs. And then those eggs, once trained, once hatched, then become the models that you and I will use for coding, for customer service, for writing. And we're either really sure of this or 100% sure, or, strongly suspect that, for example, GPT-4 isn't one large model. It's a mixture of experts, and I think more and more models are going in that direction. So you can think of it as a cluster of models. This is actually kind of a cool image. And when you ask it something, it gets sort of routed to one of the experts, right? So you might have one that's, for example, sentiment analysis, right? That's its like thing. It's the thing that it does, and that's the only thing that it does. And another one might be, coding. But the point is the large model will create smaller models specific for some use case, and they're going to be great at that use case because they're only going to contain the highest quality custom-made data for that specific use case, like the artisan data, like the good stuff. And then that will be presented to you, the user, as just, a chatbot or whatever, right? You ask it a question and it gets routed to the correct small model. That model is the world's foremost expert on that particular question that you've asked, and the answer gets generated and given back to you. So at no point do you need to interface in any way with the big queen model. That's also OpenAI's moat. That's the reason why, if they're the best sort of queen model that produces the best little experts, and then they are able to weave those little experts into the best sort of thing that manages them to have the right expert answer the exact right question that you're asking, well, that's going to be pretty hard to reverse engineer. And maybe that's why they're meeting with the US officials, kind of going like, hey, this is the way we create that national security, is maybe we let the drones run loose, but we don't release the queen. We don't get the queen get captured. But that's just all speculation. That's me just kind of like thinking through where it goes based on some of the research that we've read and some of the things that we've kind of overheard. So I don't know if any of it's true or not. So that last part about the queen and the Orion and all of that stuff, that's it never being released and just used to create those models. But from everything we're hearing so far, it certainly looks like that's exactly where things are going. And I get things wrong all the time. And a lot of you are not shy about telling me when I get things wrong. One of the tests that I ran for Grok 2 was the Watson selection tasks. It's like a modified, more advanced, more complex sort of example for those of you that know what that is. To all of those of you that jumped in and helped explain what I did wrong, what the confusion was, I do appreciate you. Thank you. But also to all of you that found it hilarious how wrong I was, I'm glad it was amusing. I've face-palmed hard after understanding exactly what happened, as Nexus 1225 says, I start out saying, this next problem really shows our biases. Then I attentively read the Watson selection task article on Wikipedia, read the solution in the article to a different problem that was the example problem, and then repeat and rephrase the solution. At which point I managed to confidently get the bad answer instead, read it and verify it to be correct without a glimpse of self-questioning. You know what? That was fair. That was fair. What's interesting about this problem is that I think in the original experiment, even though it was simpler, it was more simplified, I think something like 5 or 10% of the respondents got it right. So vast majority got it wrong. But interestingly, if I understand correctly, and I haven't read the whole thing, but it sounds like when these questions are asked in a more social relevant setting, so instead of like red and green and 16 and 14 or whatever, it was more like, I think, like this person tends to get angry or this person tends to lie, and then sort of a similar question is asked, people tend to get a lot better. So I think when we're able to draw on life experience, we get these ideas better. But when we're forced to deal with it just logic and just numbers and colors, we tend to make certain mistakes or certain biases get in our way. Anyway, so I figured I'd leave it there with an announcement of just how wrong I've been, and tell the people that pointed it out, whether you were nice or not, thank you. Either way, thank you for pointing it out. I do try to be as accurate as possible. I do record a lot of these videos kind of in one take, and I try to do it every day, even though recently it hasn't been that. So with certain things like these developing stories, right, as soon as I post it, there might be another article that changes what we know about Orion and Strawberry, etc. So in my next video, I might be like, oh, that thing I said, that's incorrect or outdated. Let me rephrase it. Let me have a new take on it. So keep that in mind. Correct me when I'm wrong. I'm not shy about admitting it if I was an error. And I hope that never changes, because I think that's the way you keep learning. That's the way you stay a student instead of kind of getting a little bit stagnant and thinking you know everything. So if I said anything about this Strawberry model or Orion or anything else that does not make sense to you, if I got anything wrong, or if you strongly agree with something that I said, definitely let me know below. Did my whole alien queen analogy with the drones and the eggs, did that strike you as true? Certainly that has really big implications for national security and how we're going to have access to AI. If a government can sort of keep the quote unquote queen safe, right? The big, important, super smart, super dangerous model, if it can keep that locked away, but still produce these smaller models that are, if you think about it, the Orca 2 is probably not that dangerous, right? Because the only thing you can reason about is how to put certain story pieces together. Like it's really good at that, but by itself, it's whatever. It's not gonna, I don't know, create some sort of a retrovirus or anything like that. So certainly keeping the big AI locked away from the public, but releasing these highly capable AIs for specific tasks, if that's the case, again, I'm just speculating here, but could be kind of a big deal for AI safety from terms of, losing it to a rogue state or some sort of a enemy country or anything like that, but also making sure that somebody doesn't figure out how to take something like GPT-4 and use it to create something dangerous, for example, because you're releasing these smaller interchangeable drones that are built for specific tasks. Certainly that model seems like it would be a lot safer. Either way, let me know what you think. My name is Wes Roth, and if you've made it this far, thank you for watching.